Let's explore some fun lineups for the Pacers this year. How can they incorporate Jay Huff the best? What new lineups will make sense? What small ball groups would I like to see? And of course, the best offensive and defensive group. We'll get to all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, one of my favorite offseason shows to do, lineups. Diving into lineups. This is the second straight year the Pacers have made this one harder on me by not having as many new players to kind of work in and look at what worked for them in the past and how I might incorporate to a new team, but enough new players to do it. And of course, in the spirit of the conversation Kyle Taylor and I had on the Pacers play style this season, we can get zany today. Look at some new stuff. Aaron Nesmith at the 4. What's the best offensive and defensive group going to look like for the Pacers? And so much more for the upcoming season, because on one hand, they don't have a ton of new players. On the other hand, they don't have 2 starters from last year. There's going to be some new lineups that play way more than they did last year. We're going to start today with the Jay Huff experience, right? And I've heard a lot of, there's 2 things I wanted to start my Jay Huff research of lineups with. One is I've heard a lot of, and I get why statistically this would be a landing point for everybody, a lot of comparisons of not their ability, but the skill sets of Jay Huff and Miles Turner, right? In terms of they both shoot or can shoot, they both can block shots, they both struggle and succeed at similar things. Right. So what does that mean for the Pacers this year? Because if Haliburton was healthy, the plug and play of just play Huff the way that Turner played seemed very simple. That's not reality. It's going to be a different team. But still, looking back at last year, right, only 3 Pacers players who actually played. There's a lot of guys who barely played. So of every Pacers player who played more than 5 minutes with Miles Turner this season, only 3 players had a higher true shooting percentage playing without Turner than with him. Right. And that's Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, and Johnny Furphy. 3 guys who their shot diet is kind of doesn't matter who they're with. Their ability to make shots, their spacing doesn't really affect what they do. And in the case of Furphy, he played garbage time exclusively. That's just more so a consequence of rotation factors. That is to say, shooting centers have that kind of value to their team. This is not some new thing I'm breaking down, right? Everybody knows that spacing is important, especially guys who can pop or roll, and Jay Huff has some dunk package stuff. He could roll a little bit. So he is, Jay Huff, going to have a similar boost to the Pacers in that way, right? He's going to make, in theory, life easier for his teammates if he continues to make shots. I think that's something else about Jay Huff that we all need to talk about is Jay Huff had a good year for Memphis last year. I think he's a good player and a good fit and a nice idea for the Pacers. He's played 95 career games. Saying anything about what he is or what he could be with any sort of factual, this will be, is I get why you're doing it, but maybe not. So for Jay Huff with the Grizzlies last year, Santi Aldama, John Morant, Desmond Bane, Zach Edey, Jalen Wells, and Marcus Smart all had better true shooting percentages playing with Huff than without him. The only 2 real players for Memphis who didn't were Jaren Jackson Jr., and Jaren played 90% of his minutes at least without Jay Huff, and Scottie Pippen. They're the only outliers. So in that's where you see their similar skill sets of Turner and Huff kind of overlap, right? And so you look back at the 5-man lineups with Jay Huff that were the best, right? What actually worked for the Grizzlies? You'll very quickly see one name that is almost always on the floor with Jay Huff and his best group. So of the lineups that played real minutes last year with Jay Huff, of the 13, this lineup did stuff for the Grizzlies last year. Every single lineup that Jay Huff was a part of that had a positive net rating, every single one included Santi Aldama, a 4-man who can kind of do a lot of stuff, but importantly is a decent defender and a decent offensive player, has impact on both ends of the floor to cover for some of the stuff that Huff may not be as good at. A lot of those groups, obviously, for Memphis had other star players. Very rarely, by the way, do those groups have both of Bane or Morant. It's not like these net rating lineups are being boosted by just having terrific talent elsewhere. Huff actually boosted other bench groups. I only bring that up to say, I think that Huff plus skilled 4 is going to be much better than Huff without a skill 4. That's been the history of what he did last year. And so that's not to say that Huff Toppin is going to be a bad duo, but if I'm the Pacers, would not give that group serious minutes. I don't think there's enough pick and roll coverage there. There's a lot of duplication on offense. We'll talk about it. I do think there's a way it makes sense. But the Huff groups that if I'm the Pacers, would like to see the most of, mostly include Pascal Siakam. In fact, going through this exercise, I still probably think I tip a little bit towards Isaiah Jackson, but going through this exercise to build these lineups made me think that Huff starting might actually end up being the better answer for the Pacers. We'll see. That's not a conclusion I landed on. I just wanted to bring that up. But the Huff groups that I think for the best result would be something like Huff, Siakam, Nesmith, Nembhard, Mathurin, which might just be the starting 5, right? You get a good 4 next to him, and then you get 3 players with enough ball handling and shooting to capitalize on the spacing he provides, or to use him as kind of a fulcrum point to become a shooter themselves, or whatever that may be, because he can occupy somebody in the interior too, because he's so tall, right? He's 7 foot, 7'1", whatever he is. I mean, whatever he's listed as, subtract an inch or two for actual basketball heights, but you get what I'm saying. He's very tall. So the starting 5 with Huff does make sense to me. So does Huff, Siakam, Mathurin, McConnell, Nembhard. That's smaller, right? There's not a real 3 there. Mathurin can be a 3. He started at 3 last year with great success. That group just has a lot of ball handling and really capitalizes on the spacing that I think Jay Huff can provide, and still pairs him with a 4 that makes the front court complete. Those kind of groups were very successful for Memphis last year. Some of the best net rating groups with that Aldama Huff pairing had like Smart, Laravia, Bane. That's like 3 guardy ball handler types. The next highest group had Pippen and Morant and Laravia, right? That's like sort of adjacent to what I'm saying here. So that is the kind of 2 and I get that this is like Huff plus good players equals good. Like, obviously that's the case, but I specifically think his skill set fits well with some of the players that will start for the Pacers. There's a very small amount of that second group I just said. So Siakam, Mathurin, McConnell, Nembhard. There's a very, very, very small amount of that group with Miles Turner last year, like a shockingly low amount of minutes, so much that I couldn't really dive in to see how well it went. Obviously, with Haliburton around, that's not the 3 ball handler combo that Carlisle would ever choose, which makes sense, right? You would rather have Haliburton out there than one of those 3 guys. In most cases, they don't have Tyrese Haliburton this year. That's why I think that's possible that group will be seen more. If the Pacers are just trying to get as much ball handling in the backcourt on the floor as possible at any one moment, it would be that trio, right? So that plus Siakam, Huff makes good sense to me. I'd like to see those groups, right? I think it's the best way to make Jay Huff an additive role player for his teammates. So I bet by the end of the year, Jay Huff's best on-off teammate in terms of net rating with the Pacers is going to be Pascal Siakam, which intuitively makes all the sense in the world. But I think that especially after diving into what he did well for Memphis and what worked well for the Pacers last year, makes even more intuitive sense. And also Pascal Siakam is really good. The other fun thing that the Pacers could do with Jay Huff is just go all in on the offense, right? Clearly this guy has some skill on the end of the floor with what his, percentages suggest, with what his skill set became last year, over 40% from 3 for his career, albeit not on a crazy high volume, right? The funny backwards dunk thing that he does. We'll talk more about him pretty soon on the show with somebody who covers the Grizzlies. So Jay Huff, like any blazing offensive group, would be just kind of sick, right? McConnell, Mathurin, Nesmith, Toppin, Huff. Like that group is just McConnell and a bunch of shooters. Go crazy. Put Nembhard out there for more shooting, but a little less just like rim pop, right? So that would be fun too. I don't know how many stops that group is getting. Nesmith, can you guard all 5 guys? But that would be fun to see that group kind of paired together and really just use Jay Huff as a blazer. Go out there, help a bench, a heavy bench, maybe not heavy bench, whatever you want to call that group, score some points. So my Huff answers were, after diving into this, the best lineups he'll be a part of, where he is option 5. And he is completely additive just by being that 5th existing person that occupies the mind of a defender, and his defense is complementary enough. And then the second way to use Jay Huff that I think would be smart and enjoyable from a viewer experience is just like rip it on offense, make it happen. I'm very curious what defensive focus groups will look like with him, right? Despite rarely playing with Jaren Jackson Jr., Memphis's on-off defensive stats with Jay Huff are like very negligible, like almost the same defensive rating with him on or off. And they had a defensive player of the year candidate as like his pure sub at his position. I think Isaiah Jackson's probably the better defender, which is why I didn't have a ton of Jay Huff defense lineups here, but we'll see post Achilles if that's the case. So there's an argument to be made for some fun Jay Huff defensive lineups, but I think offense and being that sort of connecting, additive, spacing provider piece is where he will have the strongest, most obvious impact for the Pacers this year. Let's get to some zany stuff, some Cam Jones, Taylor Peter fit stuff, and see where else we can find some fun lineups for the Pacers this season, because they do have two other new players, although albeit with rookies. I don't want to just read boom stuff. Anyway, let's talk about Cam Jones, Taylor Peter, and more Pacers zany lineups. Before we do that, talk about 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusions. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends like me, there's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or even off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. When I'm on the course, golfing with my friends, we do ridiculous things, stupid bets, silly wagers. Having energy makes it way more fun. Way more weird. And that's what golf's all about. Good times, good people, and good flavors. And the grape, ginger, lime flavors that you can get from 5 Hour Energy gives you the best clubhouse go-to without. Check 5hourenergy.com today. That's the number 5 and then hourenergy.com. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. Valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, but whether you are meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day. Or second listen, not a lot happening in the NBA these days, but I've been hearing a lot of Cam Thomas discussion from various media places. The restricted free agency market's probably the next step of free agency. And I've come to the conclusion that I think Cam Thomas is underrated. Cam Thomas is a decent player, and I understand the worth of his game, but some of the discussion of him is crazy. Locked On Nets will have a much more nuanced discussion of Cam Thomas, I'm sure, in their recent or upcoming episodes. Okay, let's keep it rolling here. Lineups for the Pacers. Before we get to Cam Jones and Taylor Peter, I want to talk about the zany thing that I want to see more than anything this season, both because I think it's good and because I think it's valuable experimentation for the future of the Pacers, who don't really know what they're going to do at center, and their future of the front court might require a lot more Siakam top and combos or smaller groups in general. And smaller groups in general makes me wonder, I think I've said this for 2 years, and it's happened a few times. The sprinkles happen, but never with any sort of serious consistency. And I get why the Pacers have other talented players at this position. Show me some Aaron Nesmith at the 4. It just works, man. 73 points on 56 possessions last year. Anyone with any analytical brain is laughing so hard that I just read a 56 possession sample as something serious. It's 130 offensive rating. That's a comically low amount of time on the floor. That is with, the query I did was any one front court player, any 4 or 5, plus Nesmith, plus 3 guards on the floor. So that is my query of Nesmith is clearly the 4. That's a lot of points per possessions on 73 trips on the floor. You might have a different definition of Nesmith of the 4, but like Turner, Nembhard, Haliburton, Nesmith, Mathurin last year. That was a great group. A lot of points. Big problem. 2 of those guys are not playing this season, right? A little bit hard to replicate, but get TJ McConnell and Jarris out there and run it. Like, make it happen. Like, I think there are ways to do it. You might call Jarris the 4 in that case. Okay, fine, do somebody else, Ben Shepherd, whatever. Just try it. Like, I get that he might be a little undersized to be a 4, but there's a point of ability where you become such a good player, like your position starts to matter a lot less. And you can just do things no matter where you are. Aaron Nesmith can play the 2 just fine for all I care. Like, I just want to see it more. I think it could be another card for the Pacers to play. And if they don't end up finding a solution at the 5 this season or next season or whatever, having the outlook of, well, they could go Top and Siakam and then Nesmith, Siakam, or Nesmith in a center. And that's 4 of your top 5 in the front court. That would be good to know. Or be like, hey, this can't defend well enough or whatever, right? They had 391 possessions last year of that same query of 3 guards, 1 front court player, but Jarris Walker on the floor, that's him at the 4. That's good. I think they should do more of that this year, even though they spent a lot of time kind of changing him to play the 3 last year. I don't know how much functional difference there is in positions on the wing for the Pacers, but like it worked. It worked fine. They were trying to make it work with Walker as a 3, and they tried it with Nesmith as a 3. Like, you could do both. Try one at the 4, try the other at the 4. The pro of small ball is speed and skill. And McConnell, Nembhard, Mathurin, Nesmith, Siakam sounds awesome. That'd be sweet. You could even do Walker in there for Nesmith. You could put Shepherd in there for defense. You could put Walker in there for more sides of Nesmith out there too. Whatever. Like, just try it. I think it can work. I think you can get enough skilled size and speed on the floor to make up for whatever you lose in size by not having a center or a 4 if they go with a 5 instead of Siakam. That was just my idea, for example. Okay, let's talk about some rookies. Jay Huff deserved a lot more discussion. There's actual NBA sample of what he's done, what he fits with. Clearly a skill set established that I could say, okay, let's look what Miles Turner did. Let's see how Jay Huff could apply that. There is nothing for Cam Jones. There is nothing for Taylor Peter. This is all conceptual, right? And so there's kind of a push and there's very different answers of a push and pull on what makes sense for them. One of them seems like they'd be malleable with just about any other 4 players. The other one seems like how they're deployed will be very telling of what the Pacers think of them this season. And I think it's very clear which one's which. So let's start with Cam Jones, who in his one summer league game as the lead guard had 20 and 10. And in all the rest of the summer league games was playing with someone else who was the primary ball handler, usually Ray J. Dennis. For one half, it was Quentin Jackson. A lot of times it was other guys. But there's that one game with no Dennis, no Jackson. And it was, go ahead, Cam Jones, be the guy. He had 20 and 10. And I'm not saying that to say that he should always be the lead ball handler. It's just at his final season of Marquette, which is where he worked his way to becoming the 38th pick, he was always the lead ball handler, right? And so on one hand, from an observer perspective, if you're the Pacers, you'd like to see some lead ball handler reps for Cam Jones. How does this look? What's he ready for? How do you get Cam Jones lead ball handler reps against like real lineups that matter, right? You can't. You kind of can't. You have to, especially if you're trying to win. So it'll be hard to do that, but they need to try, right? It'd be nice to see him. Pop him out there with like Nembhard, this is the group I came up with, Nembhard, Shepherd, Toppin, and any big, and work. Like, give him the ball, let him work. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Nembhard, wouldn't he be the ball handler? And like, maybe. I only chose him because he's a natural 2. He can be a natural 2. I think he's more naturally a 1. And so that pairing does make good sense. And there's like enough ball handling if Cam Jones can't do it or whatever to make it work. But it should be kind of a goal, honestly, to me, to put Cam Jones on a Nembhardy path, right? Nembhard comes in as a pure 1 from Gonzaga, and they're like, hey, you're playing the 2 in your second game, and this is going to be like your permanent thing. Maybe that's the Cam Jones path that makes the most sense. He is bigger for a guard. He's got some stock to him. And if his path to minutes is most obvious on a team with Haliburton, Nembhard, and McConnell, by doing that, by being a combo guard who can play both spots, you can plunk him out there with McConnell and Nembhard and C, or you can play him by himself, whatever. So I think that I would like to see the most of that group I said, where Cam Jones is kind of lead ball handler, but not in a winning context, just to like learn the most about what he's good at. But I think for his development and for the Pacers to be as good as possible for as long as possible, him becoming good at being a Nembhard-like guard positionally, not skill set wise, would be the best thing for the Pacers. But the best stuff to put around him, big wings, big guards, bigs in that case, right? Siakam plus any big and any wing with Cam Jones would work. It doesn't even matter who the 4th player is. And I can't wait to see him in garbage time with Furphy. The early seconds of the last 2 years, the Pacers quasi-first. Let him cook. Taylor Peters kind of the opposite, where it's like Cam Jones, not a development project. They're both older, but Cam Jones is like, there's kind of 2 roles this could go, and there's like sort of some specifics you'd want around him when it comes to like shooting and defense. With Taylor Peter, I'm kind of like, I don't mean like it's boring. I mean like, does it matter who he plays with? Like, if he's making shots and is a heady defender, great. If everybody's playing their natural positions, like his theoretical skill set fits with anyone. Taylor Peters does, right? 2 ball handlers, pick your 2. Maybe one of them's a better get in the paint initiator type. That would help Taylor Peter. 2 bigs, probably one of those ball handlers or bigs as a scorer. That makes the most sense. There you go, right? A point guard, Mathurin, Peter, Siakam, and a big man. That group seems like, to the extent Taylor Peter's going to play real consequential minutes, like the answer might be 0. But that, if they have to, seems like it would be how they do it. Maybe one of Mathurin or Siakam does not need to be there, but Taylor Peter's not providing you a ton of rim pressure, or at least probably not. Rookies typically aren't very good at that in the NBA. So that's kind of how I would handle his minutes. I think most of his minutes, and honestly most of Cam Jones in a world where the Pacers are as healthy as they hope to be, would come with the boom. The boom. It's so weird to say that still. But with the NBA group, that's kind of, I think, the best way for their talents to shine, for them to click, for them to be a piece that is both helping win and help develop those players. Best offensive group, what's it going to be like? Best defensive group, what's it going to be like? And some other little tiny tidbits and a homework assignment for you, the listener, to close out today's lineup-centric version of Locked On Pacers. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Clippers. Chris Paul is back in LA. An introductory press conference on July 28th. Good job, Clippers. I love that. Chris Paul explained why he signed there. Darian Vaziri, our Locked On Clippers host, will have more. Not a lot going on in the NBA these days, so intro pressers are a good way for me to get into something and learn what is going on in places where things are actually happening. Okay, let's talk about this. Best offensive group of five for the Pacers. I started at first. I typed 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I said, okay, who's the five? Oh, wait, yes, I already did this discussion. In many ways, it's a Top and Siakam group, right? There's no five, or there's no traditional five. There's two very talented offensive players there. I think in the Pacers' best offensive group, Ben Mathurin's in there. I think Aaron Nesmith is in there. And I guess Andrew Nembhard's in there. TJ McConnell probably has the most specific one skill pop that would help an offensive group. But Nembhard's got to be the answer. He needs to be the answer. He in the playoffs has been a playoff riser every year. If he could translate that to any sort of regular season consistency, it's easily him as the answer. So if the Pacers need a bucket, or if they're down 8 in the fourth quarter, or even if they're just trying to see how effective this group can be, that's what I think their best offensive group likely is close to their starting five. In fact, it might actually be their starting five. I don't think Toppin will start, but Toppin for a center, I think, is the answer to that. And then, interchange if you think McConnell should be out there, because he obviously does have scoring ability. There is a world where I will squint and say James Wiseman sneaks into some lineups where the offensive rating is just bananas. But I don't foresee that being a very common occurrence, not because he's not a talented player, just because of how the Pacers are. Would Jay Huff be in there instead of Toppin or Siakam? I mean, he provides spacing. Shepherd provides spacing too, I guess, in theory. Maybe not quite as much. So probably not. Probably nobody else. Only the ball handlers are up for debate. The best defensive group, this was a lot harder than the offensive group to me, because Toppin's definitely not there. So Siakam is there, by far their best forward defender. Is it Jackson? Is it Huff? I think it's going to be, if injuries really hurt Jackson, then it wouldn't be him, but I think it'd be him. He can switch. He can jump out of the gym and block shots. Sometimes he jumps too often. Aaron Nesmith's definitely in there. Andrew Nembhard's definitely in there. I would say Ben Shepherd's in there. And this group of five does make good sense. There's a ball handler who can initiate. There's Pascal Siakam, a play finisher. There's a lob threat. There's one good shooter and one maybe shooter that I think can shoot and still never makes them. But I think Jackson, Siakam, Nesmith, Shepherd, Nembhard is the best defensive five, especially as a pure lineup. Mathurin obviously has the dog in him aspects of good on-ball defense. TJ McConnell is feisty but 6 feet tall. Jay Huff, shrug. We'll see. I mean, honestly, of their core 10 rotation that Tyler Smith and I laid out yesterday, literally all of them except for Obi Toppin, I guess you could make a case for. You probably can't make a case for Jarace Walker right now. It's so wild to me that even all last season people were like, oh, they need a defender, put Jarace Walker. And I'm like, Jarace still hasn't really defended that well in his career. By the end of this season, I think the Pacers would love it if Jarace Walker was in one of the last two groups that I just described. If he was in either the best offensive group, because he's at his size, his ball handling or his shooting is just so valuable to the Pacers. They have to have him out there with this guy or that guy. And look at that. They score so well when he's out there putting pressure on the cup or making floaters or making threes, or he's in their best defensive group, which he was such a menace of a team defender at Houston and has had so many good moments as a defender in the NBA, but also so many just very floaty and not so great moments. And consistency is something that he is still chasing. If he is in either group by the end of the year, I think that's a huge, monumental thing for the Pacers, because that means Jarace Walker is on a very obvious and successful trajectory path. And that is your homework assignment, right? I felt like going through this, that it was very clear where every single rotation player would have a niche in some way. Siakam's obviously awesome. Nembhard's awesome. Nesmith is awesome. McConnell's in a lot of groups that's this is the best of that type of play. Obi Toppin's in the best offensive group. Ben Mathurin's in a lot of groups where it's their best scoring group, it's their best rim pressure group, whatever. Jackson's in their best defensive group. Shepherd's in their best defensive group. Huff might be, has a good case for the starting five. We'll see. Maybe he's in none of their absolute best groups, but he'll fit with a lot of groups. I couldn't get through anything where I thought the best of this, the best of that, where I was like, Jarace Walker has to be in this lineup. Now, that's not to say Jarace Walker isn't good. In fact, he's pretty solid for where he's at in his career on both ends of the floor. He's just not among their best five players on either end right now. And this was sort of the issue with him last year. Issue is the wrong word. That sounds so harsh. Where it's you want Jarace Walker to play and develop, but a lot of the on-off numbers aren't particularly good. And there was no role last year where it was like Jarris is the best answer, right? If they needed forward defense, the answer was usually Nesmith or Siakam. If they needed more ball handling on the wing, the answer was usually Nesmith or Mathurin. It was very rare that like Jarris Walker is among the best 5 guys for the very current specific situation the Pacers are in. And that's why I said what I said at the end of the defense group. Like Jarris like he can be a good player without this being the case, but like he probably needs to end this season where it's like one of the best 5s on offense or defense includes him. But, and he obviously got much better midseason. Like I wrote the story in like early January about him talking about the ups and downs of his season. Like he said that, I talked about his inconsistencies and people were like, that's a narrative. I'm like, no, he said it. Right. But after that moment, from like January to the end of the year, he was much more reliable and consistent. He had like occasional games where he would do that lazy pass thing and his defense wasn't like totally locked in all the time. But then it got there, right? And I thought, but he was much more consistent from January on. By the end of the season, that's a good launching point for next year. It sucks that the ankle injury happened. He didn't get to play in the finals. So he got much better midseason. What is the best? This is your homework assignment. The best 5-man lineup that includes Jarris Walker, right? And how does that help him develop? And how does it help the Pacers win? My answer is, because I can't just give you an assignment without doing it myself, the best way for him to be developing and helping the Pacers is have him being the third ball handler in like a real third ball handler role, not with 2 dominant scorers. He should not be playing with both Mathurin and Siakam because then he's reduced to just spacing guy Jarris Walker. Like he shoots it well. His percentages are good, but that's like no defender has yet to be like, oh crap, like I got to get out to him. It's not a spacing clog, but it's not ideal. So one of those 2 guys plus a point guard, and then Jarris Walker is ball handling option number 3 with some play finishers elsewhere. I think that is the best way for him to be used. And then defensively, like he's just such a sizable guy that it doesn't really matter. He can guard one. I'm not saying he can guard 1 through 4 like he stops his positions, but like you could put him on a 1 through 4 and be like, yep, got it. So any point guard, Shepherd, Walker, Siakam, and any big man, or any point guard, Mathurin, Walker, Toppin, and any big man, that would be my way of getting Jarris Walker on the floor with a lineup that makes sense, considering that I expect him to come off the bench. And they pulled Siakam first last year in their sub pattern. My guess for what they would have is it'd be that latter one where it's any point guard, either Nembhard or McConnell, and then Mathurin, Walker, Toppin, and whichever big man has to be part of the bench group. And then Jarris is in this rotation firmly. Like he's going to play. They have to find the best lineups for him to be a part of. He's got to find ways to impact any group he's in and end the season where it's like, yes, Jarris can do this role, this thing. We're psyched about this or that. He's an interesting guy in this lineup discussion. That is today's wacky, fun lineup podcast for the summer. Talked about all the new guys. Man, in the past, they would like get 6 new players, make trades and a bunch of signings. And I was like, ooh, this guy with that guy. It's like, that's not the 2 years in a row where it's smartly for the right reasons. That's not been the case for the Pacers. Tomorrow is the first. I have literally not written down any idea for a podcast day of the summer. I'll be talking about something Pacers related. And then Thursday and Friday, fun shows planned. And then officially it'll be August. And next month will be the deep off season of people have suggested show topics to me. I have lots of recurring stuff every summer that we'll get to. So if you have something you want to hear about tomorrow, let me know. Thank you guys for tuning in today. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East and Blue Sky under the same handle. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers and on Instagram under the same handle. Thank you all so much for listening. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.